Your magical musketeer cards don't activate in response to your spell or trap cards or spell or trap cards being activated in a column. So you can use Dark Ruler No More to negate your opponent's entire board, and then afterward you trigger the effect of your Casper or whatever your magical musketeer cards are, and then gain whatever you need to just steamroll your opponent. It's just a great feeling. Magical Musketeer is one of the many overlooked decks that can compete with the meta. The exciting thing about this fiendish Western strategy is that it's a control anti-meta deck that's practically immune to the same cards most anti-meta decks are weak to. Furthermore, the strategy takes full advantage of back row heavy and monster mash strategies, using Magical Musketeer Max to be able to cycle through your monsters or your spell and trap cards to help you break boards. In this particular video, not only am I going to be showing you a spicy Magical Musketeer profile, I'm also going to be breaking down why the deck is so good in the meta. The main deck consists of 42 cards, so starting off with the monsters, we run 3 copies of Magical Musketeer Casper. This is one of the best starters in the deck because it allows you to get whatever magical musket card you need for the particular situation. 3 copies of Magical Musketeer Doc. This just might be the second best monster in the deck because it actually gives this deck a mid to late game. Being able to recur those magical musket cards from your graveyard to your hand to be able to use in future turns is just completely amazing for this card. Next, there is a debate on if you should run 2 or 3 copies of Magical Musketeer Kid Brave. I think that 3 is the correct number, not only because Pot of Desires and Ties of the Brethren. I think it's good because if you do have additional copies of Magical Musketeer cards that you don't need, well, they become a resource for Kid Brave to pitch to your graveyard so you can get deeper into your combo pieces or the cards that you do need. Next is 3 copies, not 2, 3 copies of Magical Musketeer Starfire. This card is just bananas. I think it's a really good starter card, especially with Max, because before you would go Starfire into your Casper or whatever magical musket card that you needed, and then you kind of just sit there. Well, now if you are going second, you can go Starfire into your Casper and then turn your Starfire into a Musketeer Max, which will allow you to add the appropriate cards you need to set up your boards. It's just completely amazing, and it provides rank 4 plays. The rank 4 or the other level 4 that we do run is Magical Musketeer Calamity. Some people don't play this in their build at all, but this is literally a junk synchron at worst case scenario, so you can bring back your monsters like Starfire from your graveyard to your side of the field. You can bring back Kid Brave and Doc, and on top of that, since you do have a Link monster that will put monsters into the graveyard, it only makes sense to run Calamities because that Link monster can then summon this card, which you can fuel to bring monsters back to your side of the field. It just, in my opinion, it just doesn't make sense not to run this card, and on top of that, it does have the added benefit of being a level 4, so it does work with your Starfire for rank 4 plays. Now that's it for the monsters, and I know what you guys are thinking. TheCaliEffect, where are the hand traps? Well, I actually do have a spicy take that you guys can take from this video. Hand traps are completely trash. That is right. You guys have heard it from the King of Games himself. I said it with an asterisk because most hand traps are bad. Cards like Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring and Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit do stymie the opponent sometimes, not all the time. It can be used to disrupt some of their combos, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Was advanced to a format where you can just Ash Blossom or Ogre them, and they can still make the exact same board or even a better board or just a different board, which doesn't really help you. Now, the reason why I do say that with an asterisk is because there are really good hand traps into this format, or there's still really good hand traps. Just cards like Ash Blossom and Ghost Ogre just aren't good anymore, in my opinion. If you guys want to see a video about this, then go ahead and like this video up, post down below in the comment section. I'll give you guys a full detailed description why cards like Ash Blossom, Ghost Ogre, and whatnot just aren't great cards right now. But that is it for the monsters at 13. It feels really weird not to play cards like Ash Blossom, but the reasoning behind it makes sense because this deck doesn't even care about like whatever board. I want you to have a board. I just want to be able to break it. For the spells, I run 3 copies of Magical Musketeer Cross Domination. Now, this card is the best card in the deck. Seriously. not only can you activate this card to negate an opponent's monster effect and change his attack and defense to 0, you can negate the monster in the damage step. That is just huge, being able to stop some of those important monsters that want to activate in the damage step, like hypothetically Crystal Wing, Synchro Dragon, as well as being able to hit cards like Subterror Guru, which are flip effects, activate in the damage step, negate their attack, and change their attack and defense stats to 0 is just extremely important. Cross Dom is really, really good. And it's your hand trap because it allows you to not only disrupt your opponent, but it also gives you advantage in the process. Next, I don't run 3, I actually only run 2 copies of Dark Ruler No More inside of the main board. Now, I know what you guys are probably thinking. First of all, TheCaliEffect, what is your reasoning behind this card? Well, the biggest reason why this card is just so powerful in this deck is because I don't know if a lot of people know this, but your Magical Musketeer cards don't activate in response to your Spell or Trap cards or Spell or Trap cards being activated in the column. So you can use Dark Ruler No More to negate your opponent's entire board, and then afterward, you trigger the effect of your Casper or whatever your Magical Musketeer cards are, and then gain whatever you need to just steamroll your opponent. It's just a great feeling. But Dark Ruler No More is amazing at board break. I only run 2 copies because I just didn't feel that the 3rd copy was needed, mainly because this isn't necessarily a going second Magical Musketeer deck. I want to have cards to be able to go first. Lastly is the Double or Nothing. You could take all 3 of these guys out for hand traps. You can also take out the Double or Nothing for a 3rd Dark Ruler No More. You can take them out for Nibiru. You can take them out for Ash, but I think that this is a really good ratio. I just love the potential that Double or Nothing does bring to the deck to be able to just OTK your opponent. That is it for, well, not really for the spells, but following up, we run 3 copies of Instant Fusion. This card is amazing because it's a resource that allows you to trigger your Magical Musketeer cards, as well as it puts a monster on your side of the field that can potentially get rid of your opponent's cards or prevent your opponent from hand trapping you. 1 copy of Upstart Goblin. Unfortunately, it's limited to 1 in the TCG. The reason why I feel that this deck is so successful in the OCG is because they do have 3 Upstart Goblins. We try to supplement that by running 2 copies of Magical Mallet, and my reasoning behind Mallet is that, yes, inherently it's a neg-1 until you activate it under a Magical Musketeer card, and then sometimes this deck does brick. It just doesn't get the hands that you need, or sometimes you do need certain cards in your hand. Magical Mallet actually allows you to fix your hand or sculpt it however you want to, kind of like Thanos, but can also be a way to trigger your Magical Musket cards. Thanos is actually another card that I was consider mainboarding, but I like the Dark Ruler No More a lot. I'd probably play both of them. 3 copies of Pot of Desires. This card, man, it's free in this deck. You can activate 2 and get away with it, as you guys have seen in the live duel. Go ahead and check out the live duel. I'll leave the link down below in the comment section. But Pot of Desires is just 3 free cards if you activate it under a musket. It's amazing. 3 copies of Call by the Grave, because while we do love our logic against slower decks like this, we can't afford to be hand trapped. This logic of hand traps being bad literally only applies for the meta decks because they have so many ways around it. But Call by the Grave prevents the opponent from Ash blossoming us on our Magical Musketeer Max, which does suck. Next is 3 copies of Ties of the Brethren. If you activate this card on one of your level 3 guys, odds are you're probably going to win that game. It special summons 2 and sets you up. It's a great going first card. Now on to the traps. We run 3 copies of Magical Musketeer Desperado. This card is a Zodiac Dryden, allowing you to disrupt your opponent, and if you activate it under a Magical Musket card, you get a free advantageous effect. Next is 2 copies of Magical Musket Last Stand. This card is amazing. Stop spells and traps. Crooked Crown allows you to special summon a additional Magical Musketeer monster to your hand. Sometimes you do get in situations where you have multiple monsters and you just want to get them out of your hand, and Crooked Crown does help. Fiendish Deal prevents your cards from being destroyed. That's actually pretty good, and it gets you a free search. And then the last card is Dancing Needle. This card is DD Crow. Like, it's DD Crow on drugs. Not only do you get a free advantage Magical Musketeer effect, you can also disrupt the opponent's graveyard, and you can activate this card just willy-nilly. You can use it to banish cards like Ties of the Brethren or your Pot of Desires and trigger your Magical Musketeer effect. So I really do like that card. On to the extra deck. We can kind of blaze through the extra deck. There's not much to talk about. 3 copies of Magical Musketeer Max. This is the reason why the deck is just so good now. Being able to gain monsters or spells depending on what you're playing against. If your opponent's playing back row heavy, of course you're going to get those monsters to out advantage them. If they're playing, you know, a monster mash deck, you get those spell cards to disrupt them. 1 copy of Cyframe Lord Lambda because it's a generic link too. Hippo Shinnigan, this card comes up a lot. Just being able to link your monsters up to Hippo Shinnigan, give you a free light monster in your graveyard when it's sent to the graveyard or destroyed and sent to the graveyard, and also being able to give your monsters an attack boost. 1 Link Kribo for your instant fusion plays. Mud Dragon of Swamp is our choice of the level 4 monster to spell summon off of instant fusion, just in case we have to go into a rank 4. Millenniumizer Strict, you guys don't have to play this card. I know it's expensive, but this card actually allows you to get around hand traps or certain monster effects that could be pesky. And then Thousand-Eyes Restrict to snatch an opponent's monster. Abyss Dweller, Tornado Dragon. Of course, we run the Utopia double package. I think this card is criminally underrated right now. Evil Storm Excited Knight is a quick effect, so upon summoning it, your opponent tries to Dingirsu you. No, that doesn't happen. You destroy everything. It's just really good at helping you break boards. And then the last 2 cards, if you guys obviously can't afford, excuse me, if you can't afford the Millenniumize Restrict, you can run Steelswarm Roach, which actually this card's kind of good against Thunder Dragons. Just a little bit. Don't tell nobody. It's really good against Thunder Dragons. One of my favorite decks. And it does have some other meta matchups like Dino Wrestler Pancatrops. This card completely stops. So it's like, it's a card that you probably won't summon often, but it's something you should consider. Or Utopia Lightning, which is a really good card in this format as well, because, you know, when it attacks, your opponent can't activate card effects in response. But, okay, guys, so on to the side deck. Since we aren't really including any combo tutorials, I'll go ahead and put some test hands on my Patreon for everybody to see. But I want to talk to you guys about these side deck cards. I play 3 copies of Nibiru. Obviously, this is really good against combo heavy decks. You can main board this instead of Dark Ruler No More, and it is a light monster, so you can turn your Hippo Shinnigans into that. 3 copies of Dino Wrestler Pancatrops. This card could be dropped down to 2, but in certain situations, you probably want to see it really fast. Another card that I would really consider playing is Thanos, but of course, not everybody can afford a Thanos. 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. Now, I opted for Cosmic Cyclones over Twin Twisters because I felt that this deck doesn't want to lose cards from his hand. Like, don't get me wrong, sometimes like getting that 2 destruction is needed. Sometimes it's great. But there's also a lot of times where you don't want to discard a card from your hand, or you can't afford to discard a card from your hand. So Cosmic Cyclone is a nice medium. Cosmic Cyclone also allows you to banish certain threats and never have to deal with them again, like Salamangreat Sanctuary, Orchestrated Babel, Skystriker Multi-Roll. There's just so many cards that you can stop with this card and completely never have to worry about them again. 3 copies of Red Reboot. I mean, back row heavy decks. This deck does struggle with Sky Striker because of the Widow Anchor, but even more importantly, the Widow Anchor isn't like the terrible problem. It's the Solemn Strikes and the Infinite Impermanences and the Solemn Judgments that people play. So Red Reboot not only stops those back row heavy decks, it also stops that from Sky Strikers. You're going to have to kind of like fiddle your way through the Widow Anchor, which is like, that's just what you have to do no matter what you play. 1 copy of Last Stand, again for back row heavy decks. The 2nd copy of Dancing Needle for those decks that are monster mashes. And then the 3rd copy of Dark Ruler No More for the decks that are monster mashes. Thank you guys so much for watching another segment of TheCaliEffect. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and give it a like. And if you really did, consider joining our Patreon. We have so many awesome rewards. Please like, comment, subscribe, but most of all, enjoy. I hope you guys are having a great day like I am.